Whether you're thinking about student loans or saving for retirement, there's this one single concept. It's kind of quietly shaping your whole financial life. And today, we're going to unpack it. We're talking about the theory of interest. And to really get our heads around it, we're going to start with a bit of a puzzle. Now, this might sound a little strange, but what if I told you that a man stranded on a deserted island holds the key to why you pay interest on your credit card bill? Yeah, seriously, stick with me on this one.
So let's talk about the puzzle of interest itself. I mean, the whole idea seems pretty obvious, right? We all just accept it. But have you ever stopped to really question it? Why on earth do we have to pay someone just for the privilege of using their money for a little while? What makes that privilege worth anything in the first place?
And it goes deeper than that. Why are interest rates almost always a positive number, right? Why isn't it just zero? Why does it hover around, 3% or 5% a year? These are the kinds of fundamental questions we're really going to dig into today.
All right, so to get our first real clue, we've got to travel back in time. We're heading to the 19th century to meet an Austrian economist. His name was Eugen von Bohm-Bawerk, and he was one of the very first people to systematically ask, hey, wait a minute, why does interest even exist? And he came up with three really big reasons. So Bohm-Bawerk, he broke it down into these three powerful forces. First up, technology. The idea is simple. A dollar, or any resource really, invested today can create more than a dollar's worth of value tomorrow. Second, he had this cool idea he called roundaboutness. Think about it. Taking the time to build better tools, say a fishing net instead of just using your bare hands, it makes you way more productive down the line. And third, and this one's a big one, it's just basic human psychology. We're impatient creatures. We want the pizza today, not just the promise of a pizza next year.
Okay, so these were some fantastic ideas, right? But they were mostly just ideas, written down. It took this guy, Irving Fisher, to turn them into a powerful visual model you could actually see. And what a character Fisher was. He was a legendary economist at Yale, but also a total health nut. He was famous for inviting students over for dinner and then making them chew every single bite of food 100 times. No joke. But his real legacy, the thing that lasted, is the simple, absolutely brilliant model he created to explain all this. And this is finally where our deserted island comes into the picture. Fisher built his entire theory using a thought experiment starring, you guessed it, Robinson Crusoe. So let's do it. Let's build his model right from scratch and see exactly where this thing we call an interest rate actually comes from. Okay, so let's picture this scene. We're stripping everything down to the bare essentials. You've got one man, Robinson Crusoe. He's stranded on an island. And his entire worldly wealth? A small stash of grain. That's it. That's his whole economy right there. Right away, he's faced with this massive, fundamental choice. Choice number one, eat all the grain right now. He's hungry, it makes sense. Or choice number two, he can resist that urge, plant some of the grain, and hope for a way bigger harvest next year. This is it. This is the absolute core of it all. Do you consume today, or do you save and invest for tomorrow? So first, let's look at his options, the physical reality of his situation. This curved line you see here, it's called the production possibility frontier. Don't worry about the fancy name, just think of it as his technology. The shape of the curve basically just shows him, hey, for every seed you plant instead of eat, this is how much extra grain you can expect to get in the future. Okay, so that's the technology part. But what about the human part? Next, we need to map his personality. And that's what these other curves are for. They're called indifference curves, and they basically represent his personal preferences. You know, how patient or impatient he is. If his curves are really steep, it means he's super impatient. He wants to eat now. If they're flatter, well, he's more patient, more willing to wait for that bigger payoff later. This is the psychology part of the whole puzzle. And here is the crucial insight, the big aha moment. Crusoe finds his perfect optimal balance at the one single point where his personality curve just kisses his technology curve. And the slope of the line right at that exact point of contact, that, my friends, is his own personal interest rate. It's the perfect meeting point between what's physically possible and what he psychologically wants. But an economy is rarely just one person, right? So let's shake things up. Let's see what happens when a second person washes ashore, because this is where the magic really starts. This is where a market and the very first loan is about to be born. Now, let's imagine our two Crusoes have totally different personalities. We'll call them Crusoe A and Crusoe B. Crusoe A is the impatient type. He wants more grain now, so he's got a high personal interest rate. Crusoe B, on the other hand, is the patient planner. He's totally cool with saving for a bigger payoff down the road. That means he's got a low personal interest rate.
So before they met, each guy was just stuck, right? Limited by their own personality and resources. But the second they find each other, boom. They have that classic aha moment. They realize they can trade. They can make a deal that helps them both. The patient guy, Crusoe B, realizes he can lend some of his surplus grain to the impatient guy, Crusoe A.
And the deal itself is super simple. Here's how it works. Patient Crusoe B gives some of his grain to impatient Crusoe A today. Crusoe A is happy, he gets what he desperately wants, more to eat right now. Then, next year, he promises to pay back the original amount of grain plus a little bit extra. And that little bit extra? That's the interest. It's the reward Crusoe B gets for his patience. And this is the really beautiful part of this whole thing. After this first loan, both of them are better off than they were when they were alone. This is what economists call the miracle of lending, and this is it in its purest, simplest form. The impatient guy gets to consume now. The patient guy earns a reward for waiting. It is, at least in theory, a perfect win-win.
Okay, but let's be real. As we all know, we don't live on some perfect theoretical island. The real world is, well, it's a lot messier. And this beautiful, perfect theory of lending, it has a dark side. A really dark side, actually. One that people have been arguing and fighting about for literally thousands of years.
And that brings us to a really jarring question, doesn't it? I mean, if lending is this miracle that makes everyone better off, then why did so many of our ancestors from all over the world, across different cultures and religions, why did they think it was a sin?
Yeah, a sin. The word they used for it was usury. Now, today, when we hear that word, we think of loan sharks, charging some ridiculously high interest rate. But for most of human history, usury meant charging any interest at all. The very act of making a profit off of someone else's loan was seen as just plain wrong, as immoral.
And look, this was not some fringe idea. This concern is ancient, and it is incredibly widespread. The Bible warns against it point blank in the book of Exodus. The Quran tells believers they have to give up any outstanding interest. For century after century, the fear was that lending wasn't a win-win deal between two equals on an island. No, the fear was that it was a tool for the powerful to exploit and victimize the vulnerable. And that ancient fear, well, it is still very, very much with us today. Get this. In a typical year in the United States, around 1 million people file for personal bankruptcy. To put that in perspective, that's about the same number of people who get divorced. It's this quiet, devastating crisis, and it's so often driven by overwhelming debt from loans. Loans that were supposed to help, not destroy.
So this is it. This is the central tension of our entire modern financial world. How do we keep the good part, right? The miracle of lending from that island thought experiment. The part that fuels new businesses, helps people buy homes and achieve their goals. How do we keep that, while at the same time protecting real people from the predatory side of it, the part that leads to financial ruin?
You see, Irving Fisher's island model, it's a perfect theory. It's clean, it's elegant, it's born from the simple intersection of technology and human preference. But our world is filled with imperfect people and, crucially, unequal power. So the real question for us today isn't about the theory anymore. It's all about the practice. How do we, as a society, harness the incredible, undeniable power of lending without letting ourselves get consumed by its very real dangers?